Welcome to the Fox Den Podcast, where leaders gather to grow. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fox Den. I am here with my brother, Randy Fox, and we are going to have a little conversation and hang out with all of you for 15 or 20 minutes today, all about leadership, as it always is every week, where we all gather to grow as leaders. So how are we doing today, Randy?
We're amazing. It's a great day, beautiful, sunny here in Florida. And
Here in California, too, we've got both coasts covered.
we are, that's right. Yeah, so hopefully we've got people from all over the world touching in, and whether they're listening or watching, welcome into the room. Welcome into the den. Let's dive in.
It's a new opening phrase. Well, we were talking a little bit. There's so much going on in sports lately. We were talking a little bit about different golfers and sports teams, and maybe you want to fill them in a little bit of some of that you were talking about, and how that leads us into our conversation for today.
Yeah, and I think most people follow sports at some level, and even if they don't, it relates so well. Just thinking back to things like the UConn women's basketball team this past year here, and they're the winningest college program ever. They have the winningest coach ever, and they finally won again. And I say it that way because they had not won the national championship in 10 years, even though they've won more than anybody. They had a 10-year quote unquote drought. And then we have the Rory McIlroy story of, for the last decade, similarly, everybody wondering, when's he going to get that career Grand Slam, which basically means the U.S. Open, the Open over in Europe, the Masters, and the PGA Championship, that they win all four. And it's only been done like 5 times ever in 125 years, and the pressure's been on him to do that. And then another great golfer, Justin Thomas, been around a long time, and he hadn't won in 3 years, and he also finally got a win, this year. And it just, these things all happened like within a few months of each other here in 2025, and it just kind of starts to stir a lot of ideas on, well, how and what can we learn as individuals, leaders, and teams, from those types of stories.
Well, right, because if you think about it, in those 10 years of UConn not winning, or 3 years of Thomas not winning, or Rory McIlroy, taking that long to finally get the Grand Slam, there's a lot of losses in there. There's a lot of losses in between those championships. Even if UConn had seasons with the majority of the season a win, percentage wise, the goal wasn't necessarily met in all those years. So how do they go through all of that and have those, we'll call them failures, so to speak,
Yeah.
and then still come out at the end of it getting what they want eventually? What's keeping that drive? What's keeping that happening? Pushing them forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting because people look at golfers as an individual sport, but they have spouses, they have coaches, they have caddies, they have their parents, and you notice when they win, all of the people that they're hugging afterwards, and the Rory dropped to his knees with the emotion and all of the interviews afterwards, and the questions were, how did you keep going? And it's interesting, right? Like, how do you continue to have, I think persistence, right, is a word that a lot of people would say.
Right.
How does a team, how does a leader, how does someone or a group that isn't quite getting what they want all the time, or maybe they're not seeing the progress they're hoping for because it takes time, how do they keep going? And a lot of us call that persistence, some call it motivation, but the reality of it is that they all wanted to win, but winning wasn't the focus. That's what I believe that I took away from watching them and hearing all of them. They were focused on what it takes to
Right.
win, when everybody else, the interviewers are always, talking about you finally won. How's it feel to win? How did you do this? And then they always would talk about what it takes to win.
Yeah, that focus on what the process is. It's the same thing that you hear from psychologists when they talk to people who are highly stressed about something. They say, okay, well, here's the first step towards getting rid of your stress. What do you recognize what you're stressed about, and then figure out what step one is to solve that problem. Because when you start focusing your mental capacity on the process,
Yep.
you're no longer focused on the end goal that's creating the stress. In this case, don't focus on the win because you may not get it. But if you're focused on the process, you see the little wins along the way and it keeps the motivation going. When you say that's the same thing with a leader leading the team, it's not just the UConn team or these individual golfers that are doing that. But when we first try to lead a team, one of the first things we think about is, where do I give them their focus? And it starts with giving them a goal, a vision, right? Well, if you're trying to win and you're not winning and you want to look at the goal, you want to look at the process, okay, I need a vision. So if you keep reminding yourself the vision, and that vision is the process, and the outcome of that process may be winning, then your control is on the process. Your control is not on the win.
Right. I, I've been speaking about this like for years and talking about the destination, right? What you're saying is, what's the vision? Where are we trying to end up? And if you remember way back, we're going to go way back, right? When we were kids and mom would borrow grandpa's car and we would drive from Wheaton, Illinois down to Hilton Head.
Hilton Head,
And
South Carolina.
yeah, once a year, she would save up all year. But before we would leave, right, we knew what the goal was. The goal was to get to Hilton Head. And that was back in a time where there weren't GPSs and there weren't any navigation systems. And grandpa would go to the local AAA office and he would have them print out a little page by page that would flip, and it would literally have highlighted down the map, and on the side it would talk about the turns and the roads and how many minutes, miles, whatever we would be on each of those, and then we would make our turns and we would follow that little quick trip, they called it,
All right.
flip guide. And at the end of the day, it wasn't about us getting in the car and saying, we're going to go to Hilton Head. Oh my goodness, how come we're not there? And stressing about what are we going to do and what are we going to do? All we simply did was the person that was driving would be in front of them, focused on what was in front of them and where they were going. And the rest of the people in the car would make sure that we were staying on the path, that we were staying on the course. And it's the same thing with any team. You have to have a plan. People have to have the roles in the plan, and you have to stay focused on that process. And then you get to that outcome. And too often people get discouraged because we sometimes did make a wrong turn and we would realize we weren't on the right road or we weren't heading
Right.
in the right direction, and we would have to recalculate, right?
Like the time we went down the one street and suddenly we come up over a little hill and the road goes straight into the water, and we stopped and go, where'd the road go? And then you look at the map and go, I guess that's what that blue dot meant. And then there's a sign that says ferry coming. And a 3-car ferry came and took us across the river to the other side.
That's right. We got off course because I thought there was a faster way and I didn't understand what I was looking at. And therefore, we ended up where the road literally ended.
Yeah.
And now, granted, there was a solution and we got on it, but you're absolutely right. Like, so how do teams that may be discouraged, in your opinion, aren't seeing the progress. Maybe they didn't pay attention to the blue dot on the map
Right.
and they ended up at the road is ended. And now what do we do? What do you do? What do you suggest? What have you been doing when you're a leader and you're working with teams? Like, how do you take people that are either off course or they're discouraged and, hey, we still have to push forward?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I just experienced this last week. El Segundo Concert Band is a group that I conduct. We have a concert coming up May 17th. We're working on a lot of difficult music, probably one of the most difficult concerts this group's ever performed. And there's a couple pieces of music that we just haven't spent enough time on yet. And we only have a few weeks left. And some of the musicians came up to me afterwards, concerned, saying, do we need to cut this piece of music? I don't know how this is going to work. So a couple days ago, I sat here, I pulled the music score out, I looked at it, and the question I asked myself was, first of all, do I have enough confidence in my skills and what I believe they're capable of doing to keep this piece of music in the concert? And I thought to myself, with the amount of time left, do I have enough time? So, with any goal, you have to be realistic about it. So realistically, is there enough time? The answer was yes. Realistically, do I think I'm capable of bringing to them what I think they need? The answer was yes. With more score study, I need to do more study of myself so that I'm fully confident with what I need before I get in front of them next Thursday at the next rehearsal. I said, yes, I can do that if I spend just this amount of time on this, this, and this. And then the last thing I thought was, I'm going to go through this music and I'm going to ask myself, when I get to that next rehearsal, or even before then, if I can, through email communication, what can I provide them that will make them feel better about what they're playing? And I looked at the score and he immediately realized people had already complained to me about some things of how this music is printed. And, music has rehearsal markings, A, B, C. In this case, it's measure numbers. And what this company did is, instead of putting the rehearsal markings at the beginning of musical phrases, so that when you look at the music, it's broken into the different phrases that make sense to what you're hearing, or in this case, what the musician's playing, the rehearsal markings are just every 10 measures. So the phrasing in the music starts at these places where the rehearsal marking might be one measure later or one measure before, and it's confusing to look at as a musician. They had already complained to me. So the first thing I did, I emailed the musicians and I said, I want you to put all these rehearsal markings I'm giving you, which are letters, because the numbers are on the page already. So I gave them letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I want you to put all these at these measures. So now when they come to rehearsal Thursday, if they've done their homework and put those letters in, when they start playing, suddenly what they're hearing will match what they're looking at. And I think that's one step to making them more comfortable. So the point I'm saying, reassess. Are we trying to go after something that's realistic? That was step one for me. Or are we taking more on than we can handle? Number two, what do I need to do to be more prepared when I get in front of them, so that they feel confidence coming towards them? And number three, what can I provide them to set them up to be more successful? And I think some of what we already talked about ties into this. Now they're being focused on the process to get better, and not the end goal of, right, today I can't play it, so how will I ever do this in a concert? Yeah. Instead, it's no, here's the process to get to the concert.
Well, yeah, and what you did is what people need to do. There's a couple of key takeaways on what you just said. The first is that the leader has to focus on the leader and how the leader provides. Right? So if right, your job as a leader is to help people win, your job is to support them and to resource them. And too many times we have leaders that are just focused on the outcome and they expect the people to deliver it. Well, yes, you do need to deliver on the outcome, but it's the leader's job to help them deliver the outcome. And I think when you think back to the UConn team, that's why Gino Auriemma is a winner, because he invests in them. And there was something after they won the national championship, they were like, what clicked? What changed this year? This team is playing the last 2 months totally different than it played the first couple of months. And he said they finally went from just tolerating each other and liking each other to loving each other. And he said, what a difference when the people are so invested that they care so much about the people around them. And that's what you're talking about is I want to help my people win. People in the team have got to want their teammates to win. And so
Right.
they have to be together in that. The leader is there to support, the leader is there to resource. And when the people are focused on the next right thing, like you said, the next thing they need to do, but they're doing it with people around them that they really want to be around. Really hard to have a high performing team that doesn't like each other. And at the
Right.
end of the day, you can't make people like each other, but there has to be, that kind of investment. And so I think you're right. It's about a process. It's about persistence to believe. It's about the leader showing up first, resourcing people second, and everybody doing the next right thing and truly just consistently doing that. And the
Right.
progress takes care of itself.
Well, and the leader has to remember, if you're the coach of Rory McIlroy, or if you're the coach of UConn, or in my case, you're the conductor of an ensemble, I'm not making the music. Rory's coach is not winning the match. The UConn coach is not winning the game. So if all you're focused on is that win, you've already lost because you're not the one going out there and doing the winning. Your job is to help that team figure out how to win. So like in my case, in this example I gave, my job is to figure out how to help them play the music better so that they can go out and do a great performance. The coach's job is how do I make them better players?
Right. It's no different than the leader in a retail organization has to set the people up with resources and training so that when they're interacting with the consumer, they know how to handle that customer service interaction. The teacher has to be resourced for success in front of the classroom, right? Because the principal, the superintendents, they're not in the classroom, right? So it's this idea that you are resourcing, you are building up, and you have that persistence. Hopefully, what we've chatted about today reminds people that the next right thing and continuing to focus on the process and what they can do to make themselves and people around them better is what will eventually get everybody listening and watching to their own long-awaited victory.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully it's of some benefit and shed some light and new perspective.
That's right. We could talk about it for hours, but I think we're probably getting close to our time.
It sounds good. Well, I'm glad we had this time. And I look forward to people joining us again soon.
That's right. You can always find me, Randy Fox. You can find me at foxpoint.net. And Stephen, they can find you at
StephenAllenFox.com.
Have a great day, everybody.
Goodbye.
Visit us at foxpoint.net and StephenAllenFox.com.